Hello marine biology students. In this video, we're going to talk about the diversity of arthropods. Our next group is phylum Arthropoda, the arthropods. This is the animal phylum with the largest number of species. In fact, 75% of all animal species on Earth are arthropods. These include insects, which are a very diverse group on land, but as we'll see, not very common in the oceans, and also crustaceans, spiders, and etc. The prefix arthro means jointed, and pod or podia refers to appendages, so they have jointed legs and other appendages. They also have a chitin exoskeleton. Which is a hard outer shell. And if these individuals are to grow or increase in size, that shell has to be shed through a process called molting. The basic body plan of an arthropod is that it's broken up into a head, thorax, and abdomen, and so it shows segmentation. So we'll talk about several groups of arthropods, the most important and abundant being the crustaceans. This is the dominant marine arthropod. And this includes marine organisms you're familiar with, like shrimp and lobsters and crabs, but also some that you may be less familiar with, like the copepods, amphipods, and isopods. One defining characteristic of crustaceans is that they have two pairs of antennae, which are distinct from insects who have only one pair of antennae. We'll also find the head and thorax is usually fused as a cephalothorax. And typically covered by a carapace. Among these crustaceans, some are filter feeders, others are scavengers, some are parasites, and some are carnivores. The appendages of crustaceans are specialized for different functions. Including feeding, swimming, carrying eggs, and etc. During reproduction, the males usually deposit sperm directly to the females to ensure reproductive success. Here we see some diagrams of some of the crustaceans you may be less familiar with. Copepods are members of the plankton community and have two long antennae that are used for swimming. Amphipods are sometimes on shore and sometimes in marine sediment environments, and isopods have some terrestrial relatives in the forms of roly-polies. A crustacean you might not often put into this group or think about are barnacles. For a while, barnacles were thought to be a type of mollusk based on their external anatomy, but it's through studying of their embryological development that we see that they are in fact crustaceans. Barnacles are also one of the few examples of a sessile adult which still has internal fertilization. Most barnacles are hermaphroditic, so the penis of one barnacle can deposit sperm into its neighbors. Lobsters are another typical marine crustacean, and we can see it has specialized appendages both in the form of claws and walking feet, and then also swimmerets. Related to crustaceans but distinct are the horseshoe crabs. They're in the class Merostomata. They have 5 pairs of legs, the first pair of which is modified in males for reproduction. Mating pairs come onto beaches each spring to breed and lay their eggs in the wet sand. Horseshoe crabs are among the oldest creatures on Earth. Not the individuals, but just that the species has been around for so long. They've remained virtually unchanged for millions of years. They live and burrow in soft sediments. usually near shore, where they scavenge and feed on other invertebrates. Here we can see what these horseshoe crabs look like, and they just appear prehistoric. These are not found on the Pacific coast of the United States, but are present on the Atlantic coast. A somewhat obscure group of marine arthropods are the sea spiders, or the pycnogonids. They usually have 4 or more jointed pairs of legs. And like the ribbon worms we talked about earlier, they have a proboscis for feeding on soft invertebrates like sea anemones and hydrozoans. They are more common in colder, deeper water, but they can be found worldwide. Since insects are the most diverse arthropods on land, you may be wondering where the sea insects are, but it turns out that there aren't really there. Even though there are many species of insects on land, and even in some freshwater environments, very few insects live in the ocean. They'd be more common on shore, living on seaweeds that have washed up at the high tide mark, but they don't tolerate well to being submerged in water. In fact, the closest to it, there are some marine water striders that have been found out at sea on the surface of the water, but not beneath it. There are a few terrestrial crustaceans and isopods, though. So this concludes our discussion on arthropods. Now, before our next video, I would like you to think about what if your mouth was shaped different than any other organisms? Well, we'll talk about that.